Michael A. Rossi was born in June 1959. He had attended J. Sterling Morton East High School in Cereal, Illinois in 1975, though he had also attended this high school in 1976. Before working for Gacy, he had worked in plumbing starting at 16. He was a high school dropout. He started working as an employee at John Wayne Gacy's in May 1976 and worked with him up until Gacy was arrested. During this time with Gacy, he would claim that he had referred to Gacy by multiple names, including Colonel, Mr. Gacy, and the Duke. He would do clowning with Gacy, both of which used the name Patches, which, as previously mentioned, Philip Paskey had used this name in 1976 while working at Carol's Lounge. Rossi would claim while working for Gacy he had been assaulted multiple times. During one of these situations, he had put Gacy in the hospital. Following that point, he did not go back to work for him, though he did work with him, just not for him, supposedly. In January 1977, John Sink would go missing and be reported missing on January 20th as he had failed to show up for work. When Sink had gone missing, his family reported that nothing out of the ordinary was done to his apartment and that his taxes were still present on the table. Though it would be found that his signature had been forged and the car's title had been sold to both Rossi and Gacy. The signature had been marked as February 6, 1977, a few weeks after Sink had disappeared on January 20th, 1977. The car would subsequently be transferred to Michael Rossi with both Gacy and Rossi's name attached to Rossi himself. Rossi would claim that he wanted the car for work but didn't have the money, but that Gacy offered to sell the car and keep the money in the advance from work if he paid him back on a weekly basis, but wanted to keep his name on the title until he paid him off. Rossi would claim that he had never met John Sink, and when he had asked Gacy, that Gacy claimed he had gotten the car from Sink, but that Sink was moving to California and had no further use for the car. Subsequently, Sink's classroom, television set, and a radio had been found in Gacy's residence. Gacy would later claim that Rossi had murdered Sink. In the book Boys Enter the House, it states that in one interview, Gacy had stated that he socialized with Sink and Rossi in his apartment the night before, and the next day had found Sink deceased on the floor while Rossi was sleeping on the couch. Patty Sink, the sister of John Sink, had stated that she doesn't believe her brother left the apartment on his own. Based on the book Omnipotent Don't Ask, Don't Tell by William Dorsch, Dorsch had received a phone call in April 2012 from a woman who had dated John Mallory at the time of his disappearance. During this time, she would claim she had called Mallory and that a man named Mike had answered the phone. When she asked to speak to Mallory, Mike had claimed he was not there. Later, she would go to Mallory's apartment, where Mallory would introduce her to Mike and said he would be living there for a short time. Though she would say that she felt that Mike was strange, that he had been insistent to Mallory about meeting a man, and that this man would be going out of town. The next day, Mallory would call him and claim there had been an accident. The next day, she hadn't received a phone call from Mallory. The following day, on Monday, both his girlfriend and her cousin had gone to his apartment looking for him as they had not heard from him as he promised. When they had gone to the apartment, Rossi had opened the door. Rossi would claim that he had not seen Mallory for a few days and that on Sunday, he came to the apartment and found the door open with Mallory's car keys and groceries on the table. When they asked about the accident, Rossi told them that it had pertained to one of Mallory's dogs being hit by a car. During this conversation, Rossi would reveal he was Italian and that his last name was Rossi. As they continued questioning Rossi about Mallory's whereabouts, he had gotten more frustrated and angry with them and had continued on about how he had gone to jail and had offered them with jobs with a man who did work out of his home where they could do clerical work. Though they continued probing, which Rossi had responded with, "I don't care about Mallory, I'm glad he's gone." Rossi would also state that there's a place with a bunch of dead bodies that no one knows about, not even the police. Mallory's girlfriend and her cousin had decided to leave the apartment, though Rossi had attempted to give them a ride home in his cab that he drove part-time. The following day, the girls went back to the apartment once more, where Rossi once again answered and stated, "All you care about is Mallory. He probably went away for a couple of days." The girls would once again go home, though the following day, Rossi would call Mallory's girlfriend, claiming he had found the number in Mallory's home and was curious if she had heard from Mallory. He would follow up with asking if she wanted Mallory's other dog, and had continued probing about the clerical positions, and offered a steak dinner if they would come back to Mallory's apartment. Another individual named Steve, who had been friends with both Mallory and his girlfriend, had started having experiences with Rossi, stating when he first moved in with Rossi, which was right before Mallory had disappeared. He had stated that he believed Rossi was a drug user, and that one night Rossi had come over to his home and asked him to come over to Mallory's apartment. When he had gone over to Mallory's apartment, the door was open and Mallory's keys and groceries were on the table. He had said that Rossi attempted to explain something happened to Mallory, but he felt it didn't make any sense. When Steve had stated they should call Mallory's family, Rossi had gotten angry and stated, "You don't need me to stick around." When Steve had been presented a photo by Dorsch of a photo of Michael Rossi, he had identified it as being Michael Rossi. It's important to note many things with this story. It's very similar to that of John Sink's disappearance, and that somebody had some kind of access to the home before the murder. Though there is evidence in both cases of things being removed from the home, in the case of Sink, his TV, radio, class ring, and car. In the case of Mallory, there was attempts to give his dogs away. In other cases, such as when Gregory Gotznick had gone missing, his girlfriend was offered a job working for Gacy by Gacy himself at his home. Gacy would later go on the record to state that women's clothing had actually been found in his home. Interesting, one of the survivors of Gacy, Robert Donnelly, had stated that Gacy had talked of killing girls in Schiller Park. Around Labor Day in 1977, the body of Deborah Rosencrans was found in the Schiller Park woods, which was near Gacy's property. She was beaten and bound with a knotted rope shaped in a hangman's noose. Deborah was last seen on the night of her disappearance with a man getting into a blue Oldsmobile. Many referred to the man as Cowboy and Clubfoot Charlie. There is also a boyfriend named Mike who the police could not locate. Now, what I do want to say about this story is that Gacy had an Oldsmobile, but it was a black Oldsmobile. And the name Cowboy does stick out, as Gacy had another employee, Robert Young, who was tied to the Russell Nelson disappearance, who had used that name. But there is some weird things with that case where it does not seem likely that Gacy was involved with it too, such as the composite sketches. Now, the sister of Gacy, Karen, had also stated that when the police had finished their investigation and had given Gacy's belongings back to the family, that there was a photo at the bottom of a drawer which showed both Rossi, Gacy, and an unknown man that Gacy's sister could not identify engaging in sexual acts. Though Rossi would claim in court that he had not been raped by Gacy or engaged in sexual acts with him, he would also mention that he had shut down conversations with Gacy about sex.